now work at a law firm, Bryan Cave, which our offices in Atlanta are here in Midtown. We're an international law firm with about 1,100 attorneys worldwide. I practice in the area of employee benefits and executive compensation. So I tell people that I write retirement plans and I write health plans and I fix them when they break, and they break a lot. So it keeps me fully employed. The last time I was in a courtroom, for those of you who think that lawyering is everything that you see on TV, was when I was being sworn in as a member of the bar. So if I'm ever in a court again, it probably means I've done something really wrong. So that's sort of the brief summary of me and my practice.
So my name is Hemanth Digumarthi. My full name is Shri Hemanth Digumarthi. The relevance of this is while I was at Oglethorpe, I went by my first name. Then I was like, hey, let's switch things up. I decided to go by my middle name, just to confuse people. But I do the exact opposite of what Chris does. Is I'm a litigator and I go to court on a fairly consistent basis. I was actually in court earlier this morning. But what I do is I work for State Farm, and basically my job, 95% of my job is to represent people that are involved in car accidents who get sued. And about 5% of my job involves representing property owners that get sued for things like slip and fall on their property, dog bite cases, random things like that. And so my job involves going to court a lot, meeting clients all the time, and that's something that I enjoy. And before I took this job, I was a prosecutor in DeKalb County, and I prosecuted lots and lots of misdemeanors, and so I was in court practically on a daily basis, and I had the opportunity to try lots and lots of jury trials. So that's what I do, and that's what I enjoy doing. And if somebody put down a piece of paper in front of me and told me to write a contract, I probably would commit malpractice.
My name is Liliya Kovalenko. I'm actually quite the opposite. I'm a corporate counsel, so I work for a corporation, not a law firm. I do business transactional law, which is all contracts, agreements. We do a lot of tax law, basically anything that the company requires, we do, and it's an international financial services company. Before that, I was in-house counsel for an IT company, so I actually haven't worked for a law firm. I did in law school and before law school, but after my law school career, and I have an MBA in tax, so I actually like business probably as much as I like law, or I love law. So, and that's why I chose the route to work for a corporation instead of a law firm. And I really enjoy it because there's a lot of business involved, and we get to do, to make a lot of business decisions, and I really enjoy it. So, no litigation for me. I don't go to court at all, and I like to be home before 6. So, that's it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Phaff, bringing up the rear here, and I'm kind of like the medium bowl here between no litigation and all litigation. I work for Constangy, Brooks & Smith, which is a national labor and employment law firm. We have about 26 offices nationwide. We have 3 in Georgia, but our offices themselves are quite small, so we sort of consider ourselves a hybrid between a big firm because we have a national footprint and a small firm because we have a small firm field. Excuse me. Our office in Atlanta here is downtown, right by Peachtree Center where the Mart is, also by Hooters. That seems to make sense to a lot of people when I say that for some reason. I get a lot of nods. But I absolutely love my job. I'm kind of in between. I work with people, corporate counsel, to help them solve employment litigation problems. And then we also do employment lit as well. But because of the way our practice is, a lot of it is motion practice, which means that we do a lot of it through motions. So a lot of it is brief writing, and we don't always end up in the courtroom all that much because a lot of our cases settle because it's cheaper. So that's kind of the way it goes. So I'm kind of the happy medium in the middle.
Anyone have any questions? If not, I'll launch with a question, which is, when did you decide you wanted to go to law school? And then when in law school did you, or when did you decide to go into the kind of practice that you're currently doing? And start with anyone who wants to answer.
Well, I'll start. So I decided to go to law school after I did terribly in Dr. Ofterheidi's chemistry class. And figured I couldn't get into med school, which was probably a good thing because I really do enjoy what I do. When I was in law school, so in law school, what you do is ideally, you want to get the best possible grades that you can your first year of law school, because that's what you use when you interview for jobs during the fall of your second year of law school. And big firms like the one that Chris works for almost exclusively recruit students, law students, who are in the top 10% of their law school class. And it's a long process I'm going to go into. But and then so you work between your second and third year of law school, and ideally based on where you work sort of determines, you know, where you'll end up after law school. It's not a hard and fast rule. It sort of used to be before the economy went to hell. But before that, that's sort of how it worked, is you would intern at a big firm and then, or a firm, and after your second year summer, assuming you did a good job, they would offer you a position. So what I did was actually work for a prosecutor's office in rural South Georgia, in the metropolis that is Waycross, Georgia. And it was a 6-county circuit, which I'm surprised that none of you have heard of, because it's very well known. But under Georgia law, between your second and third year of law school, you can actually practice under what's called a Third Year Practice Act. So if you work for a prosecutor's office, if you work for a public defender's office, or if you work for certain nonprofits, you can actually argue a case in court in front of a jury. So at the end of the summer between my second and third years of law school, so first of all, I got to go to court like all the time. So my job was to hold the briefcase and to hold the chief assistant's jacket while we were like going from the car to the courthouse. And this is such a small county. You would actually talk to the judges. You would get to talk to the sheriff of the county, like Andy Taylor from, you know, like I forget the name of the show now, but so, and then the final thing that I got to do was I actually got to try a felony jury trial between my second and third year of law school, between the summer, between my second and third year of law school. And I'm sure if I pulled up a transcript, I did a terrible job, but I ended up winning. So the case was fascinating. It was somebody that broke windows out of a trailer house, like a mobile trailer home. And so we tried the case in front of a jury, and I won, and I was just absolutely hooked because I just enjoyed it. And that's when I decided I wanted to be a litigator, or at least a prosecutor. And so my third year of law school, my second semester, I ended up working at the Gwinnett Solicitor's office. And I structured all my classes at Georgia State. You can take them at night as well. So I took them at night, and I just hung around the office all day until people were just like, okay, fine, we'll just let the kid try this case. And so I tried like a stop sign case. I tried like an impeding the flow of traffic case. I actually tried like one case of some substance, which is fleeing and eluding on a motorcycle, which was really, really interesting. And so I got some more experience doing that. And then when I graduated law school and took the bar exam, I was fortunate enough to get a job at the DeKalb Solicitor's office. And they hired me on a Wednesday, and the bar results were going to come out on a Friday, and they were like, yeah, if you don't pass, don't show up on Monday. So fortunately I did, and I showed up. But that's how I started down this path. So.
I guess I'll say how I started. I was always more interested in business, you know, and that's why I went to business school as well. But in law school, I concentrated on intellectual property, trademark infringements, and corporate tax law, and I realized that I love it. It was a lot of fun. And I just decided that, you know, that was for me, and I did not enjoy, you know, litigation, even though I did, you know, I did moot court and we did competitions. I just, I don't know, I just enjoyed securities and, you know, tax a little bit more. And that's what I've been doing since.
Mine is actually kind of a funny, it's a true like Oglethorpe made it happen for me moment. Barb, get out your camera. So I was actually an English major at Oglethorpe, and I wanted to go and get my PhD in English and be a professor. Like my favorite professor, Dr. Reitman. Anybody here know Dr. Reitman? He's awesome. So I was really interested in doing that, and it was something, you know, I talked to him about it, and he sort of suggested to me, well, you know, I've heard from a lot of my students that they feel I can prepare them really well for law school because they're not terrified in law school because they've had me. So I said, okay, well, that's cool. Maybe I'll go check that out. So I went down to Emory and sat in on a class and absolutely loved it. And it was some really boring class, like property 101, you know, like first year property, which everyone at this table remembers. And it's like, rule against perpetuities. And so it was, and I actually really loved it. I loved the classroom setting. I just loved the way it felt. And I was like, oh, maybe this is for me. So I actually applied to both graduate schools and law schools because I was still kind of making up my mind. And then when I went to go visit schools, I realized that was it. That's what I wanted to do. So I went to law school, and I was really happy I did. Maybe not the whole time the first year, but you know, I'm happy with the overall experience. So that was kind of how I ended up in law school. So that was happy accident number 1. Then happy accident number 2 was I was actually at an Oglethorpe Stormy Petrel function. Barb Henry was there, and I met one of the partners at my firm who graduated from Oglethorpe. His name is Bill Clifton. And Bill was talking to me, and he was like, well, I'm going to give you my business card, call me. And I don't know if he actually really meant it, but I did it anyway, and I bothered him to the point where they at least gave me a job after my first year, and then I worked there my first year for the firm, kept working for the firm my second year, and split my summer actually at a GP firm as well. And I decided I didn't want to do general practice. I really loved sexual harassment, made my day. So I decided to stay where I was.
There's got to be some context for that. You really love, no.
Yeah. Not happening to me, but listening to it about other people, let me put it that way. So I really loved what I was doing, and the employment lit, so I ended up staying there, and they offered me a job. I guess they liked me enough, so I stuck around. So that's kind of how I ended up there. So it was 2 Oglethorpe happy accidents. So.
And Bill Clifton, just for the record, was a philosophy major at Oglethorpe.
Yes, he was. Got his law degree at Columbia and his master's degree from Georgia State. But anyway, so, and Bill's around if you ever see him sometimes at those functions, but anyway. So that was an Oglethorpe 2-time happy accident.
He's on the President's Advisory Council and has helped many Sarahs with different activities in law.
Yeah.
You know, my path is not the one I would recommend, but I'll tell it to you just in case. I was a psychology major here. I wanted to go to psych grad school, or so I thought. I applied to psych grad school's PhD programs, actually applied to Vanderbilt. It was the only application I completed before I lost my stomach for it. Something in me just said I can't go on in this. And so after that I said, well, okay, I gotta get a job. So I worked for a year for a nonprofit here in Midtown, which is where I met my wife. So, you know, it had that going for it. And after, you know, towards the end of that time there, one time I was out working on a Saturday. It was the only Saturday I ever worked, and my boss, my boss's boss, called me into the room where he was working, and he said, Chris, that was kind of the way he talked, he said, you should go get a master's in public policy, because that would really fit in with our goals here. I did statistical analysis. I'm not sure what a master's in public policy does with that, but anyway. So I went back to my desk, and I started looking. And there was a program at Georgia State that was Master's of Public Policy and a law degree. And I said, well, that sounds like an interesting program, but I don't really want the master's. I want that law degree. And I said, well, then I'll just go to law school. And that's kind of how I made the decision to go to law school. Once I was in law school, I was somewhat of an anomaly. I guess Lily and I were both somewhat of anomalies in that I liked tax. I took every tax class I could get my hands on. Most of my fellow students, they took federal income tax, and they were like, if I ever touch this again, I'm going to vomit. Whereas I couldn't get enough. And when I went through the process where I interviewed and I summered at a law firm, and I said, I want to be a tax lawyer. And they said,
Yeah,
a tax lawyer, yes. And I said, I want to be a tax lawyer. They said, that's great, but we don't really have any pure tax positions. But then after I had been there and I had gotten my offer to come work there, I got a call from one of the partners in my group who said, there's this thing called benefits, and it's kind of tax related. We just deal with this one little section of the Internal Revenue Code, and if you like tax, you'll probably like this. And I said, sounds better than being a general corporate lawyer. So that's why I picked it. I like puzzles. It's at that kind of area. and it's an area that's constantly changing. So as a result, I'm sort of always employed, and I'm also sort of the last area of the law that you can't Google, because people don't really understand what I do. Even other lawyers don't understand what I do. In fact, I'll share this story. My first day on the job, we were all of the new associates, which was back when there were a lot of those, before the financial crash. We were sitting in a room, and the head of the sort of corporate department, all of the transactional type practices, was standing in front of the room, and he was running down all the different practice areas under his umbrella. And he got to benefits dead last, and he kind of paused, and he said, and then there's employee benefits, and nobody knows what they do but them.
Anyone have any questions? Sit down, I'll ask another question, and I'll throw it to the panel, which is, I have friends who teach in law school now, and they are telling me that they're having a hard time getting their students placed. If a student wants to go to law school, or thinks he or she wants to go to law school, and then wants to be employed as an attorney in a way that is reasonably remunerative, what advice would you give them about choosing law school? What sort of performance goals would you set for them? And how much debt do you think they could reasonably take on in order to get a legal education?
I mean, I can start if you want. I was pretty recently graduated, so I graduated here in 2010, graduated law school in 2013. I would say, I guess there's a couple of parts to that question. I think the first part is you should choose a law school that's a good fit for you. I think it's important to find a school where you will fit in and you will thrive. Kind of like it's the same thing to find an undergraduate where you will fit in and you will thrive. The reason being is you've got to connect with the professors. You want to have people who write references for you, and you want to have people who are going to go to bat for you when it comes down to it. You want professors that are going to call their associates at the firm that you just interviewed for a job for, because it happens. They call their old professors at the law school and say, what do you think about so-and-so? And you want them to go to bat for you. So, you know, I think that that's the first thing, is pick somewhere where you'll thrive. I think pick somewhere where it's cheap is good. If you have a scholarship to go somewhere, that's certainly something to consider, maybe a state school versus a private school. But you know, don't let that be the only factor, but you know, certainly consider it. I think the other thing that's really important is to get on your internships. If you want to intern somewhere, start finding people who work there. Use your networks. This is a network. People you babysat for are a network. I mean, that sounds stupid, but there's a woman I babysat for, it's the CEO of a company, and she certainly gave me a job reference. So, people that and anybody that you know, start getting to know those people, asking them questions, let them help you so that you can kind of help yourself. Because having a network and who you know is so important, because there are jobs that go out there that aren't posted on big posting websites. They're just kind of looking maybe for somebody tentatively. And then I think the last thing would also be, it's your performance in school. You know, how well do you do in law school? I think it matters. You know, were you on the law review? Did you do moot court? You know, you're obviously going to be more competitive, you know, with your other candidates if you did better. And lastly, I think it's important to have hobbies and like be an individual. Because when you go to a job interview, it's nice to be able to talk about something that's not like, yes, I just read school books all the time. Because they know that that's not true. So it's okay to be an individual and have hobbies. Because it gives you something interesting to talk about. And it gives you a way to sort of distinguish yourself from the other 50 candidates on paper that also went to law schools and also did law review and also did this and were also #1 in their class. But if there's something unique about you that people can remember, I think that will stand you in good stead also. So distinguishing yourself and not being afraid to, you know, have some individuality is a good thing. And make you memorable. So that's all the advice I can come up with right now. But
I was going to say, I think that's all good advice. I mean, in terms of picking the school that fits. I mean, the choices that I came down to, I chose Vanderbilt, and this is the truth because I had two schools that were equally good, and that, you know, I had they're reasonably the same in terms of the financial package that they were offering me. And Vanderbilt had a humor magazine, I kid you not. And I was like, any place that doesn't take itself too seriously, that's the place I want to go. Because law school's hard enough, it's stressful enough, that I figured if there were enough students there who had a sense of humor, that there was actually a magazine that was run by students specifically for that purpose, I want to go there. I would also say that it's almost more important, I mean, it's almost more important to finish near the top of your class than it is to go to the best possible law school. I mean, yes, if you can get into Harvard or Yale or something like that, then maybe it's worth it even if you don't finish at the top. But as in distinguishing among schools in terms of differentiating yourself, if it's a good school, and it doesn't have to be a great school, but you finish near the top of your class, you can get a look by a lot of law firms, probably more so than if you finish more near the middle of your class, even if you're at a better school. That's just the reality. I mean, that's one thing I would say, that if you're really looking to be employed, that's a differentiator. And in terms of leveraging your network, I completely agree with that. I would also say, in addition to situations like this where you've got 4 people who do 4 very different things, right? We have a lot of other, Stormy Petrels who practice law in different ways. If you think you might be interested in an area, because law is a very diverse area, there's a lot more to it than what a lot of people realize. I had no idea that what I do now even existed before I got that phone call from the partner in the fall of my 3rd year of law school. And even after he called me, I still didn't know what it was, right? So, I think meeting as many people as you can and talking to them about what they do, and that'll also help you decide, do I really want to go to law school? Do I really want to be a lawyer? Because, if my choices, and there may be many, but if my choices are all these things and none of them sound particularly appealing, then maybe I don't want to go to law school. So, I think that's another thing I would do, is make sure that you get as much information as you can, because there's a lot more to the practice of law than what you see on television.
I would say just be practical, work hard, and think outside the box. Don't depend on other people to help you. Help yourself. All the internships and associate positions I got in law school and before law school were because of my own efforts. I reached out, I was working for the Federal Trade Commission. Well, no, I took the consumer law class and I realized I really like this area. I want to check it out. I found out there's, FTC, the Southeastern region is in Atlanta, so I reached out to the director and I said, hey, I'm really interested in this area. Here's my resume. I'd like to meet you. That's it. And they realized I was hardworking. I went, interviewed, and I got the job, during law school. Same thing with my summer associate positions. I reached out on my own. And they noticed that I had a drive, and I was very practical. I said, I know how to do this, this, that, and I work hard. That's it. And I just depended on myself to get those positions, and I think people appreciate that in this economy. They appreciate that you work hard and you're driven, and you're motivated. You're not depending on somebody else to give you a handout or help you out. You just do it. And same thing with any company. Atlanta has a great market. We have so many headquarters, so many big companies headquartered here in Atlanta, and still continuing to come here. We have big tax breaks. This is a great place to be in a corporate position, like corporate counsel position, business transactional attorney types of roles. So think outside the box. Just because you're a lawyer doesn't mean you have to be at a law firm. You can be at an agency like the Federal Trade Commission. You can be at any of the corporations that are in Atlanta. So just be creative and work hard.
And I would also, if I could just piggyback on that, I would also say don't be afraid to reach out to folks. It helps if you've got some kind of connection, even somebody who can just facilitate an introduction. Or even if you can say, hey, I'm an Oglethorpe student and somebody else is an Oglethorpe alum. As a general rule, most lawyers are more than happy to, meet with you for coffee or take you out to lunch to talk with you about the practice of law. So don't be afraid. We don't bite. We are human, despite what, the popular opinion might be. So, it's really, a lot of times I know people encourage me to talk to lawyers, and I was really kind of scared. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. Because they don't know if they're going to want to talk to me. But almost universally, we're going to be okay. They're going to want to talk to you if you reach out to them.
It's important to, I think, too, on that note, update people in your network about what you're doing. Like, if there's somebody that you think that you connect with well, that might be doing something you really want to be doing, and you're doing something related to that, like you just won a moot court competition or something, keep them in the loop. You don't have to be annoying about it. Like, don't, send them 50 Facebook posts a day or something. But, keep people that are interested in you updated about what you're doing, because knowing those folks, and if nothing else, it'll also broaden your professional network for later on in life. Even if it doesn't help you get your first job, it may help you get a job down the road, or help you bring in a client, or maybe you want to make a transition from like law firm to corporate practice. So I think that's worth it too.
So I'm going to start by asking some questions. So first of all, how many like seniors are in here? Okay, are there any freshmen? Is it just all freshmen? 2 sophomores? Like juniors? Okay, and the people that didn't raise their hand? I didn't see your hand raised. Yeah.
So I'm a
Freshman, okay, good. So, and sorry if I missed it. So, first of all, the reason I said that is, especially for those of you that are freshmen, I think getting good grades at Oglethorpe is important. It's not going to define you as an individual for the rest of time, but here's where it helps. So the better that you do in school, because first of all, you're here because you want to get an education, and you're fortunate enough that you're here to get an education. But what it does is it leaves multiple options open and multiple doors open. So if you wanted to do something, it leaves the possibility of that open. And so I think it's never too late, even if you're a sophomore or junior, to work on your grades, because it's just basically, it's just a question of the available opportunities. And what that does, to answer Professor Knippenberg's question, is so it allows you to go to potentially law schools where they'll give you scholarships, or they will give you some stipends, or if you don't necessarily get the best LSAT score, because in order to go to law school, you have to have a good education and you have to have good LSAT scores, if it'll kind of help counterbalance the other thing. Now, I'm not saying just study and have the personality of like paper, because that doesn't help either. It's kind of a very difficult thing that you're asked to do here, which is get good grades and work on yourself. And that could mean different things for different people. Like for me, working out on myself involves like making sure that my desk is clean so my secretary doesn't freak out every time she walks into my office, or making sure that, you know, I keep on task and not get distracted by like a volume of emails or what my friend may have posted on Facebook, because you know, we're all grown-ups, but we still look at that stuff. So that's an aspect of yourself too, which will help you out when you get to law school, if that's what you want to do, as well as any other graduate program. And it'll help you with these things that these guys have been talking about, which is this concept, which I don't know, how many of you have thought about networking, just by a show of hands? Okay, so how many of you, and next time raise them high.
Yeah, that's something to be proud of.
And then how many of you have actually like reached out to somebody to network? Raise your hand. So, okay, so for the two of you that did it, was it scary the first time that you did it?
Yeah, there's a little putting yourself out there.
Okay. Did it get easier the second time you did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just say, oh, hey, can you help me?
Right. And so that's, for those of you that have thought about it, but haven't made the second transition to doing it, it's scary. It's always scary, but it gets easier over time. It's just like anything else. If I said, get up and like run 3 miles, you know, without any training, it's very difficult, but if you train for it, you can do it. And that's just like anything else. And I'll give you a big, big tip. When you email people, and like all of us, because we get a ton of emails every day, when you email us, in order to make it easier for us to meet with you, say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm at Oglethorpe, I'm available to meet on these dates and these times. If these dates and these times don't work for you, let me know what else works for you. So that way, I don't have to like look at my calendar and look at what my wife put on my calendar, call my secretary and say, hey, are you trying to schedule depositions on these dates? What dates do I have? So you make it user-friendly for me to reach out to you. And so getting back to his question, I'll answer it, which is get good grades as best as you can, have hobbies, personality, because all of that helps out, especially for, say, the purpose of what I do, because I have to deal with people all the time and deal with juries. And they're judging me all the time, right? You're judging all of us as we speak. Like, who do you like? Who do you not like? Why do you like them? Why don't you like them? Is this tie, like, okay? It's okay to admit it. It's okay to admit it. But that helps you in terms of finding a job. And I think if you get good grades in here, it'll help you get into a law school of your choice. It'll help you have the confidence to do well in law school, because you're pretty much dealing with like people that are all have done very well. And then I remember being in law school like my first week and going like, oh my God, there's like nobody else in my family that I know of that's a lawyer, and these guys are saying that they're like, mom's a lawyer and their dad's a lawyer and they're like, grandpa was a judge and they're like, auntie was something else, and like, so if you do well, it'll give you that confidence to do it. You can practice your networking skills now when you get to law school in order to make it easier. And you can still get a job doing what you like. And if you can get stipends and loans and scholarships, then you don't have to worry about the debt. Because in Georgia, for example, the cheapest law school, I think, is Georgia State. So when I came out of law school, I came out with, I think I want to say, something like $30,000 in debt, or somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000. I try not to think of it. But I do know that every month I write a nice check for like $400 to repay my student loans. And that's because I went to Georgia State, and at Georgia State, the tuition back then from 2003 to 2006 was like $5,000, and now I think it's somewhere between $8,000 and $10,000. And how you pick a law school, it depends on where you're going to thrive, where you're going to do well. It also depends on what you ultimately want to accomplish. A cousin of mine just finished clerking for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg of the United States Supreme Court. She wouldn't have gotten that job if she went to Georgia State like I did, because there has not been a Supreme Court clerk from Georgia State. So, well, first of all, she's brilliant. So she like got a 4.0 from UC Berkeley, and then she went to Columbia, and I'm sure she did exceptionally well there. And that's how she did. But she knew that because of things like what you all are doing right now in planning that out. So I say get good grades, work on your hobbies or your interests, and work on all the things that you think are wrong with you, like not being organized or not cleaning up your desk.
How important is it to be involved in like clubs, like honor society and stuff like that? Do schools really look at that compared to like grades and other things? Because I know it's very time consuming to do that versus, you know, studying. It takes away from that time. So how important is that?
So my answer to that is there's multiple things that you get. I can't ever answer a question with just one answer.
That's when you know you're a lawyer. There's 4 parts to this question.
There's 4 parts.
And I will address each of these in turn.
So and I'm always like hedging, right? Because if you kind of answer it, then you reach a broader audience. But like, first of all, I think the reason that you should participate in an activity like a club or something like that is it teaches you how to manage your time, okay? Because your life is only going to get more stressful, or the demands on your time is going to only get greater as you get through law school and you have a job, and it's like you have to decide, am I going to get a beer with my buddy, hang out with my wife, work on this project, or like just veg out in front of a TV. And it's kind of like prioritizing what it is that you want to do. So in my view, it helps you early on to do that. Like, should I be working on my core one, like reading assignment, or should I go to this club? And is it okay if I skip the meeting this time and go to the next time? If I agree to do something for this club, how am I going to integrate that with what I do as far as my job right now, which is going to school, goes? So that's important in that aspect. And I think schools really do look at those things because they want to make sure that, one, you survive the rigors of academia, but two, that you also give back something. And they want people with like different personalities in order to balance it out, because I know some very, very smart people that did exceptionally well in law school, but don't have like the greatest personality and didn't get the job offers that they should have gotten just based on things that are written on their paper or their resume or whatnot. So that's kind of the answer to the club thing. I think the club thing helped me out a lot.
I'd like to add to that, like find something that's unique about you, and when you do have your 30-second speech where you talk to somebody, mention that one unique thing. You know, it's not about how many clubs you're in, but it's something that makes you truly unique. Like, I know you're from South Africa, right?
Yeah.
I'm Ukrainian originally. You know, we have people from everywhere. We have different interests and hobbies. You know, I love to ski, scuba dive, whatever. People are interested in stuff like that, you know, because they don't want to know that you're just a boring person. You know, and so no one cares if you're just a smart person, but you have nothing interesting to add to the environment, you know. So, you know, it's good, it's important to be part of clubs and get involved, you know, but you also have to find something that's unique, maybe learn something new, something interesting about yourself, and, you know, something that appeals to other people as much as you, but something that stands out. I think that's important today because you can blend in with like 500 other people, and if you're one neutral person, black and white, you're not really going to stand out, you know? So I think that's the best advice I would give.
I'd agree with that, and I would say, I mean, to that point, I wouldn't just pick a club because, hey, that club sounds good. I mean, I would do a club that you actually want to be a part of. It might make it harder to make those time management calls, but I mean, you know, because you want to be a part of it, but I think that's what's going to differentiate you. If you're in a club you don't like it, then don't just do it because it's a line on your resume. Because I don't think that does you any good if you can't talk about it. And additionally, if it's something that you really care about, if it's something you're really invested in, I mean, odds are pretty good that when you're going for a job interview, there's going to be somebody in the whole slate of people that you meet with who has an interest in common with you, right? And so if you've got that on your resume, I did such and such, right? Oh my gosh, so did I, right? And that's an instant connection. That's what's going to make you memorable too, is that you've made a connection with someone rather than you're just the next resume that went across their desk that they looked at. And I'll be honest with you. I look at, when I get a resume, I look at, okay, where'd they go to school? What are their interests, right? I mean, and that's, because usually that's the last thing down at the bottom. Because if I'm going to talk to them, right, I'm going to ask them about those interests. So.
I think too, to that point, don't just be a member. I think this is an excellent point. Don't be a member of 50 things. Be a leader in 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's much better to take a leadership role and be a part of something you really want to be a part of, and do that, and do 1 or 2 things that are unique about you or that you love to do, and do it well. Rather than be a member of 50 organizations, but it looks like you don't know yourself. Does that make sense? I think it's kind of the same note. I think it all drives back to that same point, which is find something unique about yourself, you know, focus on those aspects, and rather take a leadership role there, because I think that will benefit you also.
And I would say in terms of the law school application process, it's not either clubs or grades in the LSAT scores. It's got to be both and. The activities don't substitute for the academic accomplishments, and they'll start by looking at your GPA and at your LSAT, and then they'll look at the other things. So I think I'm right about that.
Also, you know, your personal statement, make
Yes.
it, you know, something interesting about you, not just like a general, I want to add to this, you know, service-oriented community, whatever, you know, like everyone knows you're not that like excited about law before you get into law school because, I mean, you don't know anything about it. So, I mean, don't just say things that are kind of generic, you know, just say things like from your past experience that makes you, you know, want to understand this profession a little bit more and get involved, you know, something that's unique but incorporate into your personal statement. They look at that as well.
I agree.
And the little secret is they have these law school fairs that you can go and talk to the admissions directors, the ones that are actually looking at your application process. Or like at Georgia State, you can actually go talk to the director of admissions and say, hey, I want to go to your school. What do I have to do to go to your school? And they'll tell you. It's not a secret. They'll tell you about it. And I've talked to some professors at law school. They don't want to know about like, I want to be a lawyer because I saw some Matlock episode and it like super inspired me to do it. Or like Franklin and Bash is awesome, which all of you should watch, by the way. It's a great show. But you know, like I wrote my law school entrance about Saved by the Bell and about like some camp that I went to in like the 6th grade, and it was a risk, but it was a calculated risk because I knew that they would like read it and I would be different. And like Professor Knippenberg said, it's the whole thing. I mean, I can't remember it, but there's some movie with like Bill Murray and Jason Schwartzman where he's like, Jason Schwartzman like is like a part of every single club. And it's just like, that won't work. Because if you get really bad grades, then you won't make the cut, as far as that goes.
Any other questions? Yeah.
What aspect of Oglethorpe has helped y'all the most?
The writing. I would tell you the writing. Law schools there are multiple choice exams, both on the bar exam, anyway, on both on the bar exam and on, in law school as well, I had multiple choice exams. But the overwhelming majority of a lot of professors in law school grade you on a written essay exam, given at the end of the semester that counts for your entire grade. There are not 2 exams, maybe, I had one class where I had 2 exams. A midterm, which counted for 20%, and then a final, which counted for 80%. So, I mean, you do the math. But basically, there are written exams. So if you cannot write an essay, and you cannot write one quickly, and clearly, with good words, and sentence structure that makes sense, you will fail. I don't know how else to put it, you will fail. And there is a curve, and the curve will only help you so much. But if you want to be at the top of the curve, you've got to write well.
And write fast. And as fast as you can, and don't stop until time goes off.
Yes, you'll be typing as they're like, time, you're like, ugh, period. You know, so you've got to be fast at typing, and you've got to be able to read quickly, analyze quickly, answer questions quickly, and write it down, and do it all at once. Because they don't give you have a 90-minute exam to answer like 6 questions, all with fact patterns that are this long or whatever, and you're reading through it, and you don't know what they are in advance, there's no study guides, you do it yourself. And it counts your whole grade, the whole semester. So, if you can't write well, you're screwed. That's really the way I'd like to put it.
And I would say that that's true. I would also say the reading aspect of it was a big part. I mean, here you read very difficult texts. Not everybody reads those, right? And when you get to law school, you read different, but very difficult texts.
Yeah.
And, you know, having to actually sit through and parse through some of the thinkers we read here, and then turning around and having to parse through some 17th century, you know, opinion from the, you know, equity court in England is, you know, there's a similar skill set that is applied in both of those. And so it's helpful. I mean, I think the writing's important, but in terms of surviving law school, like, I would go home, you know, law school, they'd give us like, you know, I don't know, I'd have, from all my classes in a night, I'd have like 50 pages of reading. I'm like, well, this is nothing, you know? I mean, because it's way less than what I got here, right? So now at first it's a lot tougher reading because, you know, let me just say, most people don't naturally think like a lawyer, right? And so that means most people don't naturally write like a lawyer, and certainly don't write like a judge. And so it takes a little bit of learning how to read those opinions. But yeah, I mean, I think the writing is a very important part. Everything Sarah said is spot on, but I think the reading is also a big help.
I'd say for me, it's just the location of Oglethorpe and the size. I think it helps you with leadership skills. So when you leave a place like Oglethorpe, there's not that many people here, so you have the ability to know everybody and get comfortable speaking to people and be a leader in one club or the other, and actually make friends on your own. You're not just like lost in the big school. So when you do go to law school, you have the confidence because you've been in a leadership role, and you've been in a place like Oglethorpe that gives you a chance to thrive and really speak up in class. So I think the fact that this school caters to you, you become an individual and a leader, it caters to you, so you have that unique experience already. I went to Oglethorpe, it's a private school, and it's classic education, whatever, but you're already more, you stand out more than somebody that would come from a bigger school, and so you have a big advantage here, and I think you should really appreciate that. I did, it helped me out a lot when I got to law school.
And I think learning how to write concisely is a huge, huge skill in the practice of law, because like I communicate a lot with opposing counsel via email, and sometimes it's just as a CYA, like, hey, we had this phone call, this is what we talked about, blah, blah, blah. And I think doing that, it's very, very important. Sometimes we have to write like a letter to my client explaining some legal concept in order to break it down into something that he or she would understand. And it can't be something that's very, very long either, because then they won't read it. And so that's what's important. And I think like the writing skills are crucial in terms of that, and synthesizing down information. And for the purpose of what I do, courtroom, trial work, some of your reading will actually come in handy. Because I was flipping through some CLE, and it was talking about great arguments that you make. And one of the ones that came up was Thucydides, the Peloponnesian War, and some of the speeches that were in there about how, in terms of, you're talking to a jury about it. And I remember reading through it and like circling it, and I was like, what does this have to do with anything? But it really does help. So it kind of goes back to doing well in school. You buy the books, they cost a lot of money, read it.
I think too, one thing that helped me out was, I'm sure a lot of your professors still do this, teach by the Socratic method. They sit in the classroom, there's like 12 of you in there, and they ask you tough questions, and you're like, man, I didn't read today, please don't call on me, or whatever. But law school is the same setup, except it's a bigger classroom, 8 people. And some professors are random, they will call on you at random. Some professors have a schedule, or they go alphabetically, or they skip row, or whatever their system is that they call on you, and they all have one, and everyone spends the whole semester trying to figure out what the plan is. But if you're not afraid of talking out in class, and you're not afraid of answering questions, that is a big hurdle for a lot of people. They're terrified of being called on, and it's very scary. But you shouldn't be when you're from here, because you should have that experience where you've been called on in class to answer something cold. And it makes a big difference, because I had a lot of friends in law school who were terrified for the first semester because they'd never spoken in class before. So it was very scary. But since you're over that fear, it should be easy for you.
Well, it's not just being called on either, it's more like you have to dissect legal case and legalese. So, and these cases are from like 18th century, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
1866.
yeah,
Or something.
so, or discuss like wills, trusts, and estates, or old property law that, it's pretty archaic, so you really have to, read well and kind of talk about it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And, you have about 12 cases or something a night you get, for this class, so you have to go through them quickly. I don't know how many.
Yeah.
but
Definitely.
Be confident.
And be prepared every day. That's the other thing, it teaches you to be prepared every day. Because the day that you are not prepared is the day you will be called on, 100%. And I had a professor in one class, and I remember this kid he called on. It was a torts case. It was the first of the slip and fall cases. It was a banana case. And he called on this kid, and he said, Mr. Smith, please stand up and brief this case for me. And he goes, starts briefing, it's very clear he has not read the case. And the professor said, Well, since Mr. Smith has not taken the time to read this case, I will not take the time to discuss it. Please sit down. And he moved on to the next person who completely skipped the case. I will tell you it was on the exam. So, you do not want to be that person. And that professor will not forget you or your name ever again. So, it will teach you to be prepared.
And I had some law school professors that would take the polar opposite, which is they would just grill you if you didn't read, like relentlessly for about 30 minutes.
Until you were like in the verge of tears.
Right. And so it was just one of those things. But I think the other thing here is like, when you're in class, it's okay to express your opinion, even if it's ultimately wrong. That's something to be learned, to know that it's okay to be wrong sometimes, because you can't be right all the time. So,
Except unless you're a professor.
that's right. You get carte blanche, though.
Any other questions?
Come on, you people are thinking, you're wondering, you want to know.
Do you have any specific questions for any of us? Or specific area of law?
I'll start calling on people.
I have a question. It's kind of, I feel like y'all kind of answered it, but it's still just, I'm curious. Like with me, like I have a specific kind of law like, that I want to do, and that's like why I'm going into it. Do you almost think that's like not like a great idea to go on like, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm saying, this is why I'm here? Do you think that could hurt someone when they're in law school, like having like an exact thing, or do you think it's better to kind of go in completely open-minded, because who knows?
Well,
I think you should be a chameleon. You know, as a lawyer, you have to always adapt to change quickly. And with the economy and, you know, just your environment, you have to, you know, things always change. So, for instance, right now, intellectual property is very hot. You know, IT, trademarks, copyrights, patents, you know, all those things are, you know, fun and they're exciting. And so you have to kind of switch areas almost. You know, there's some areas of law that are not as great anymore. They're like, you know, you won't be able to repay your loans or something. So it just depends on what your values are and what your goals are after law school. Like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for something exciting, like a career that you're gonna love? Or are you looking just something that's gonna earn you a decent salary? You know, whatever your goals are, you have to kind of learn to adapt to change and change quickly. You know.
I was going to ask, so what is the area that you're interested in?
I want to go into family law.
Okay.
I would suggest getting an internship in that, because I have several friends who wanted to practice family law, did one day on the job and quit. They're like, I can't do this, I would never do this ever again.
Know yourself. Like, if you don't like drama, like I can't do family law. I'm not a big fan of drama. I just kind of like to keep it black and white because I want to go home and not think about work, you know?
Yeah.
But if you're kind of like, you enjoy the drama and you like this kind of, you know, arguing, you know, it doesn't stress you out or anything, then go for it, you know? But you have to just know yourself.
Yeah, because I mean, it was one of those things, like, I didn't think about it until, like,
Yeah.
I had to be a part of it, and then I was like, okay, like, it takes a rare person to do that, and it's different, but that's, you know.
Well, I have a funny story. First of all, email me, because I put my email address on here, and I'll put you in touch with some family law lawyers. But I have a friend of mine from law school that practices family law, and this is his reason. He's like, dude, people come to me in like the most emotionally vulnerable time of their lives, and I charge them a lot of money, and they pay me, and I do that. That's his sole motivation, right? And so he's completely equipped to deal with the drama because he's just like, they're paying me. And that's seriously what he told me. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting way of doing it. So I think if you're interested in an area, I think the first thing you have to do is just flat out meet people that are in that area and talk to them about like, what do you like about your job? What do you hate about your job? If you were gonna do this over again, would you do this? And people love talking about themselves, like I do.
Especially lawyers.
Especially lawyers.
Well, we even take you to lunch to do it usually. We're like,
Yeah.
yes,
Right.
we'd like to take you to lunch.
We have those corporal loans that do family law, so we can help.
Yeah, we-
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Kind of going off of that, like I want to do corporate law, and so the reason I want to do law is like business. I didn't really want to just get a business major because I feel like so many other people, they just stop there, where I want to keep going so that, you know, I have a better life, and, you know, it's something that I really want to do. But do you go in just open-minded in that field, that specific field? Like, since I want to do business, do I go in with an open-minded business or an open-minded all law?
There's a lot of areas in business that you can go into. You know, we do a lot of tax, intellectual property, like all these different areas, just general transactions, you know. There's different things that we do, and it depends if you want to be like at a law firm. If you're at a law firm, you usually specialize in one specific area. If you're at a corporation, you kind of usually do everything, you know. So above me, I only have one general counsel, basically, and then everything else I do, you know, myself and then my staff attorneys or whatever, you know. So it just depends on what kind of where you see yourself. If you know, get bored easily like I do, you know, this is a great job for me because I do a lot of different things on a daily basis. Like I don't stick to one area. Like I don't just do contracts, you know, one day. I do one thing this day, tomorrow I'm doing something else, next day I'm doing something else, you know. So it keeps me like, you know, entertained. And, you know, it's good and stable. But if you really want to specialize in the area and still do business, then you know, go work for a law firm and they'll make you basically specialize, especially if it's a big firm. They'll be like, oh, you know, you're doing, you know, vendor supply agreements or something like that. You'll be in one specific area in business. So I think business is general enough where you can, you know, kind of choose.
Yeah. Most people go to law school, and there's actually a funny story about two lawyers in our firm who were at the same law school at the same time, and one of them was dead set on being a transactional lawyer. So, you know, she didn't know specifically what kind of business law, but she was going to be a transactional lawyer. And the other one, he was dead set on being a litigator. And they flipped in their, in literally their second semester, their third year of law school. Like, you're approaching the finish line, and they changed their minds, right? Both of them going the other direction. And they actually, she's the litigator, he's the corporate lawyer, okay? So, I mean, I think it's great to have, I want to do this. I mean, that's what I knew, for example, that I did not want to litigate. That was just what I did not have the passion for it. You know, that's just kind of how I was. But I had no idea all of the different areas, just like Lily talked about, that were sort of within the transactional context, and which is why I'm ended up doing something that, like I said, I had no idea even existed. So yeah, I would say that. And as far as if you know, for example, that you want to do family law, I agree with everything that was said in terms of talking to people who do it. I would think when you go to do interviews, if you know, it's one of those things, if you're going to interview with a firm that family law is a big part or maybe all of what they do, then you play that up. If it's a part of what they do, but it's not most of it, then, which is rare. I mean, usually usually those shops are sort of self-sustaining. They're kind of on their own. But if it is something that they do, but it's not all of what they do, then you can say, well, that's what I'm interested in, but you know, I would be interested in these other areas that are also related. You know, that kind of thing. So, I have one thing that I always have to say anytime I sit on a panel like this, because I want everybody to know this. If you go to law school, and nobody's asked the question yet, so this is what I have to say. If you go to law school, and in your first year, you will want to quit. Everyone wants to quit in their first year of law school. That's natural, it's normal. If you feel that way, that doesn't mean, you know, that you're not suited to be a lawyer. I think, can I say that all of us up here probably felt that way our first year of law school at least once?
Yeah,
I mean,
there's at least one class you took that you were like, oh, no.
I wanted to quit every other day. That's not a joke. You can ask my wife. I was on the phone with her, I was like, I'm gonna quit. The next day, it's like, I think I got this. And the day after that, it's like, I'm gonna quit.
Well, first year you don't get to take any fun classes, you just take what you need to take, and,
Right.
and they're not that exciting. So.
But also,
Stuff.
yeah, but also to the point that Sarah made, you have in a lot of classes, you've got one test, that's your whole grade, and it's really hard, and you might get called on twice, you know, in the course of a semester. So it's really hard to know how you're doing, right? I mean, and I'm just not arrogant enough to think I got this, right? So, you know, it was really hard, and I'll tell you what turned it for me. If you feel that way too, if you feel like I want to quit, go and talk to your law school professors. Find the most approachable ones. Some of them are kind of prickly, but not all of them. And find some of the more approachable ones and just talk to them, because that's what I did. I went to my contracts professor, and this was just a very brief exchange before class, and I said, you know, I want to talk to you. I said, I don't know how I'm doing. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to stay. I mean, I just kind of laid it all on the table. And she was like, I can't have this conversation right now, because it was right before class. She said, but just know, we, your professors, all talk, and you're one of the ones who's getting it, so don't worry. And if you want to come talk to me later, she said, you can come talk to my office. She said, I'm totally happy to talk to you. But that was it. That's all I needed to hear. Because I had no idea. I couldn't tell. I had no way to gauge my performance. So you will want to quit. Just know that, it's okay, it's normal.
Yeah. And figuring out ways to gauge your performance is hard.
Yes.
But sometimes you can find, if you befriend upperclassmen, older exams, so you can test yourself to see if you are getting it. I wouldn't recommend doing that like your first year, your first semester, you'll freak yourself out, but
Yeah.
there are ways to figure out how to gauge yourself, and that's the other thing. Try and find an upperclassman mentor in law school. I did. There was a girl who was a 2L at the time when I was a 1L, and she was actually really helpful. Just gives you advice and calms your nerves a little bit. Somebody's already been there. If you have a family member, that's always nice, but I was like you, I didn't have any lawyers in my family, so I had nobody to sort of ask. My dad's an engineer, and he was like, I don't know, it's not a problem for you, not me, so keep moving. So it's nice to find someone to mentor you. You know, obviously you need to seek them, and people aren't standing around looking to mentor you, you need to seek them out. But if you find someone who can just give you a little bit of hand or advice, they're usually out there.